Welcome to the next episode of the Assembly Line podcast, the place where industrial businesses come to tell their story. Today, we've got a bit of a special episode. We're joined by Stelios, our project manager, who has been working with us for nearly 3 years at Solvi Digital. He's going to be getting under the skin of how 2024 has been for us as a business and what 2025 is going to look like for us as a team.
Nice. Let's get started then.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Joe, let's rewind to the start of 2024. Paint a picture of where you were personally, professionally at that time.
I think that's a really good question. So at the start of the year, we were at an interesting point where Andreas and I were working across so many different areas of the business. Obviously, I was working across that sales function primarily, but also managing a lot of client relationships. Andreas was heavily involved in delivery, designing social posts, writing emails. So really, we set out the goal to be able to build a strong team beneath us that would allow us to focus on the growth of the business, keeping clients as happy as possible, and delivering the best work that we could. And I feel like we've made some really good progress on that.
Yeah, I agree. I think it was a really exciting time. A lot of moving parts, a lot of kind of fast-paced things happening. And of course, along with that, you get some problems, you get some issues that come around that. But I guess that's the fun part of business, right? Like solving those issues and really, really tackling them.
Yeah. Well, obviously every year has its ups and downs. What would you say was the biggest challenge like we faced this year, and how did we tackle it?
Do you want to take us away on that one, Andreas?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest challenge is really setting up the business to make sense working with more clients. I think across many industries, probably a lot of directors can relate with what I'm saying. But essentially, having a setup, for example, for a set amount of clients, let's say 20 clients, for example's sake, is completely different in terms of what you would require at 50 clients, for example, or 100 clients. So that transition to make sure processes work, to make sure that the team is embedded, and that, I guess, quality of work and delivery is at the same standard. I'd say that's probably one of the biggest challenges that I saw on my end. I don't know if you would agree there, Joe.
I think that's spot on. And it's in many of the conversations that we've had, I think that reflects them well. Definitely, I'd agree, is one of those core challenges. I'd say for me, one of the real ones has been, I guess, understanding a bit more about what it means to assume that sales director role. And obviously, as a small business, that sales director role includes a range of different things, including managing the outbound activities, writing proposal documents, managing hundreds of contacts in a CRM at any one time. And I think obviously we'd been kind of getting by before that, but we really saw the impact of that working well at the start of this year, or even towards the end of this year. Obviously, we were working closely with the guys that We Have a Meeting, Jack Frimston and the rest of the team there. Great people and a great team that have supported us no end when it comes to training and also the sort of direct outbound activities. But yeah, I'd say that's probably one of the biggest challenges, us getting that nailed and making that work for us rather than not performing how we'd like.
Absolutely. It's always good to, let's say, acknowledge the bad things as well, like the challenges. But on the flip side, what was the biggest win, would you say? Which one stands out to you this year?
For me, it will have to be the fact that client satisfaction has been probably, I'd say, an all-time high at a time that we're growing quite rapidly. So for me, that's a massive achievement. The fact that we're able to maintain delivery standards, maintain, I guess, what I would say makes us unique, which is, our reactiveness, being there for a client. You can pick up the phone, you can send us a WhatsApp. Doesn't matter what time it is. We'll get back to you as soon as as soon as possible. So I'd say that's probably one of the biggest things, biggest positive things on my side this year.
Definitely. Well, neither of you had extensive experience managing teams before, but how has that journey been for you so far, managing the teams?
It's been tricky. I'd say obviously both Andreas and I, we started the business when we were relatively young. We came straight out of university into the business, and we worked really hard to allow that to happen, especially during the period of COVID. It wasn't easy. It was a lot of hours. It was pennies according to per hour compared to the hours you work. But obviously that now has paid off, and we've been able to build out that team. In terms of managing that team, initially there's almost that recruitment piece. There's making and forging a business that people want to work with, work in. Do you have the processes? Have you got the right expectations in place, the right benefits to attract good people? And then after that, it's about ensuring that we have the right almost upskilling and management processes in place to ensure that happens. And part of that's managing around performance is understanding what clients expect from us and aligning our team's motivation with that, because that's how clients choose to work with us or don't choose to work with us.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, it's so important to remember that each person is different, right? They have kind of different ways of working. They have different characters. I think from my end, one of the things that I kind of failed to acknowledge early on is understanding that when someone comes on board, another team member, they'll have different requirements, different needs, different ways of understanding things. And quite often, you maybe fall into the trap of just thinking they'll be able to do the same thing as you do it at the same standard without, understanding the exact way that you think, all that kind of stuff, basically. So, yeah, that's one lesson I saw.
Obviously, team's growing. We love to see it. That means more work coming in. Obviously, we need more resources. But as directors, there's always the challenge of handing over responsibilities. How have you managed that? And what's been the most surprising part of that process, do you think?
I think we both find it difficult to hand over responsibilities that we've managed for 6 years, I guess, at this point for the agency. We have certain ways of doing things. We have certain expectations around the quality of what's done, the results that are done. And I think both of us, probably one of our biggest flaws is that we are not very good at bringing people in to do things that we've always done. And then when they do come in, for example, we've got our great copywriter and our great designers, we see how much of a benefit it is, but it's a challenge to kind of get that snowball rolling downhill in the first place. In order to make that work.
Way better.
We're all guilty in that area, I think.
Yeah.
All of us. Yeah. It's the habits, isn't it? Habit of you not doing it and actually telling someone else to do it.
It's hard because obviously you start a business, you give it your, right? You give it everything. And as soon as you hand off a certain part of responsibility, then it's out of your control in a way, right? It's not entirely out of your control, but it's not you doing it, so you don't have that level of trust. So it's finding ways to let that go, finding ways to trust people. And it's the harsh reality, because if that doesn't happen, we're just going to stay where we are.
I would just say that, it really is that it's the fact that it takes a long time to do initially. It takes a long time to train someone. It takes a long time to recruit someone, to train someone on, again, what makes us different, what we expect of ourselves as a business. But once that's in place, it's almost that sigh of relief. You're just so glad that it's happened. But it's that upfront investment of time initially that makes it feel like maybe it's just worth me doing this. Maybe it'll be faster if I do it just this one time. And then it keeps coming up time and time again.
Yeah, that's why it's important, how much we're putting effort into working on those processes and implementing them in order to achieve that. Obviously, marketing for industrial clients is a unique challenge. How have you seen attitudes shift among your clients this year?
I think from my end, I can see a lot more clients perhaps being receptive to social media side of things. So I think a lot of industrial brands perhaps don't think that brand has a lot to play in their marketing piece. Perhaps they don't see the value of it. But I think, at least from my end, I can see a lot of a lot of people being more receptive to it, especially um, even the personal brand side of things in terms of incorporating some of that alongside the business mix, the business kind of strategy that we have on social. LinkedIn is a massive place. I don't think that's going anywhere. I think that's just going to be more and more important for these industrial businesses to build relationships, connect with the target audiences. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Yeah. Anything you want to add to that, Joe?
Yeah, I guess from like a front end side of things. So from when we first engage with a client, whether it's someone coming inbound to us or any of the outbound activities that we do, I'd say that they're often much more kind of inquisitive or receptive to the idea of some sort of marketing. And I think what that's come from is, if they're honest with themselves, quite a lot of challenge around their existing business results, their existing business structure, their sales function, and how they are engaging with younger stakeholders that are coming into buying decisions or buying roles of the businesses that they need to engage. So I'd say that we're really moving forward in quite a nice way, and I'm glad we spent the last 4 years really working incredibly hard to infiltrate the sector, let's say, without giving up and without stopping and moving to a sector that almost certainly would have been easier, because now they're catching up with what we know is going to work for them and how we know we can impact their businesses and their brand.
Yeah, and just to add what I was saying earlier, I just thought of it now. But essentially, what I kind of wanted, where I wanted to lead to, is that they're also a lot more receptive to showcasing the behind the scenes of the brand as well. A lot of the times, I think 2 or 3 years back, maybe we would have suggested that as an idea to an industrial business, and they would have said, "Well, why do I need to put a picture on LinkedIn, of someone's birthday, for example, or something else that doesn't really make commercial sense?" But now they're slowly starting to see that actually that's what people want to see. That's what they can relate to. That's how their brand can become personable. And actually, over the long term, that's what really helps foster that trust and relationship.
Yeah. In terms of the cause of that, I think it's almost a change in how we're buying as consumers as well. Like B2C brands are using much more like user generated content or UGC type stuff. No one's really almost even bothering with the direct ads anymore. It's primarily focused around story driven content, narrative, as you say, behind the scenes, understanding from perspectives of customers rather than just almost like direct to camera advertising, which is then almost making people think, hang on a minute, why won't it work for us? Can we get a piece of the pie?
Yeah. To the next one. Uh, Obviously, we work in that traditional, boring type of industry, often alongside older business owners. How has that influenced the way you approach the work?
Interesting question. I don't think it's really changed what I would recommend in terms of the work. So if I just take an example from a design perspective, I wouldn't necessarily tone something down purely because it's a more, as some like to consider a more boring industry. But I guess it would change the way that you kind of communicate that across, and it comes down to the bit that essentially you need to educate to an extent. Um, yeah, you need to educate the client to an extent in terms of why we're doing that, why we're taking that approach, why it works. And essentially, obviously, the most important part is demonstrating that it does actually work in terms of the results. But compared to other industries, there's just that little bit longer time frame needed in terms of educating and getting, I guess, the knowledge up to a certain level to buy the trust of the client, to really give them confidence that this is the strategy they need to follow. So yeah, coming back to your question, I wouldn't really change the approach. It's just essentially the way that it's communicated.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. I think what we do is we take them on a journey from A to B. And in many industries, you can just sort of pitch a client something and take them on that journey very quickly. But I think for us, we have to gradually almost convince, as Andreas said, we have to take them on that journey and move them through the process. And that's helping them understand the reasons and the rationale behind our recommendations. It's about starting small and gradually scaling up a package. It's about gathering that trust initially, rather than just kind of putting a $5,000 a month plan in front of someone and expecting them to go for it, because again, they're just not used to that level of expenditure in that marketing department. Many of them don't even have marketing budgets in their organizations, that we've seen many times.
I guess, Joe, you from a sales director perspective, you say you probably see day in, day out these kind of almost barriers or misconceptions around marketing, especially within this industrial space. What would you say are like the top 3 kind of objections you get from these types of clients?
Oh, I'll try my best. I guess the first one I would say is around almost that term that I would say is like how business is done. So they're very much used to engaging with the market that they might say we win business through relationships. And the reality is those relationships perhaps started a long time ago through a networking event, through a phone call from the yellow pages, or a letter drop. These are still really viable and approachable marketing strategies that we even still use as a team and recommend as a team today. In fact, we did just last week for an in-person event. So I think that is one of those misconceptions. When we pick up the phones, when we have these conversations, people think that we're just going to try and sell them on a paid ads package where they're going to have to put a fixed ad spend per month. But the reality is the strategy can involve many different channels, many different strategies. So yeah, that would probably be a first one. Second one is probably around the fact that they maybe already have team members internally that do bits and bobs. They do small bits of marketing. Yeah. Maybe it's a sales manager that posts on LinkedIn sometimes. Maybe it's an IT manager that puts a blog up on the website. They think they have it covered, but unless you have a dedicated resource in that area of the business, then you can't give it the attention it deserves. And obviously I'm biased because a director at an agency, but we think that there is also value in having someone in that has got vast different experiences across different business models in an industrial sector to be able to provide that like consultative support and advice. The third one, when we get down that sales process, is probably price. It's not cheap to have a quality team introduce your marketing activities. You're getting some of the best strategists, you're getting some of the best videographers, some of the best paid ads experts, some of the best email marketing experts. And for us as a business, there's not a cheap resource to bring in, and therefore we have to act accordingly. So it's our job, it's our responsibility to show that return on investment in that stage in the sales process to warrant the expenditure.
Absolutely. And things we hear from our customers as well, stories from them, from other marketing agencies, they just see us and they just didn't expect.
That's another episode in itself.
Yeah.
That'll be a fourth actually, is people that have had terrible experiences in the past.
It'll be a great thumbnail for that one. Obviously a great one. Yeah. Andrea, I've got a question for you. Looking back, what's one thing about your journey with Solvi that you think people don't fully understand?
I think people just don't understand how much actually needs to go into running a business to make it work. And years and years and years and years of putting 100% every day without fail, whether that's a good day or bad day, it is literally a roller coaster. That's how I can describe it. That kind of journey is a roller coaster. You have your ups and downs, but all you have to do essentially is love what you do, show up every day no matter what, and then trust the process, because at least in my case, I've seen that kind of formula works very well. And apart from that, I would say you need a strong team. I can't picture myself being where I am now if I didn't have a good team behind me.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything to add to that?
I think that's a really good point. In terms of what I would do, I don't think I would necessarily do anything majorly differently than what we've done, because I think we've learned a lot through the process, and if we didn't have those experiences, then we wouldn't know what we know.
Yes.
It's almost like the trial and error element is, we've tested things, we know what works, we know what doesn't work.
Better it happens sooner than later.
Yeah, it's better. Yeah, exactly that. And then now we're in a fortunate position where we're able to try different things at different points in time, and we're able to kind of allocate resource to areas which we didn't previously think we would be able to, just to be able to really double down and test certain areas. Example being, obviously, we have a meeting on like 2 days a week calling for us, which then gives us almost that sort of scalable lead generation side of the business, rather than us just having to manage that process internally. I think it's been a really long journey. It's been a really tough journey, but I feel like we're just starting to reach the top of that hill, the top of that mountain, where there's like no doubt so many more different problems will come. But I feel like we've almost solved the ones that have been in front of us for maybe the last like five years.
There'll definitely be more hills in the future.
There will be.
Definitely more hills for us. Yeah, and coming off what you just said, Joe, if you could go back and do one thing differently this year, what would it be and why?
Doing things differently. I think possibly the biggest problem in my day-to-day role is flattening out the curve when it comes to bringing on new business. And I think this is like an age-old tale for almost every single business. It's almost that like boom or bust type approach that you often see, where you spend so much time like prospecting and closing new business, and then it's about onboarding all of those new clients. And because we're so particular about that experience that they have, it takes time. It takes a lot of project management resource for yourself, Stelios, Andreas. Like, it takes a lot of time to make sure that everything's set up from a like a commercial perspective, finance perspective, a systems perspective. So yeah, I would say for me, I would ensure that there is enough different strategies in place that are all performing well to generate those inquiries, both passively and actively, to ensure that we've got a relatively flat line when it comes to those, when it comes to that sort of close a new business every month. Because if you don't have that, it's difficult to allocate resource. It's difficult to bring on the right team members. It's difficult to, write the right number of proposals, things like
essential.
data.
Absolutely essential. Do you want me to answer that question as well? Because I would probably go a bit further back than that, kind of right to the start. Maybe not right at the start when we didn't really know where we were heading into, but I would say one thing I'd change is perhaps looking for some kind of mentor earlier in the early days, because probably we'd be able to get where we are now a lot sooner. And time is money. Years go by. If you can be where you are in 2 years instead of 4, then that's priceless, I'd say.
You're 27, you're getting old.
28 in a few weeks.
Basically 30.
Practically 30.
Yeah. Well, off to the last question now. Well, a lot of people dream of starting something like Solvi. What's one piece of advice you would give to them? Almost like as a head start, maybe, or like heads up?
Don't do it, have a peaceful life.
I'll be serious.
Yeah, no, don't do it. I think like you do, for many people, it's probably not the right thing to do. Like, it's important to go on nice holidays, have good experiences. It's important to do all of these things. And when you choose to do something like we've done, you compromise those areas immediately. You just do. And it's a really challenging thing to do, but what we've done since we started the business, again, like registered in sort of late 2017, early 2018. So I would say, know what you're in for and be aware of the compromises that you have to make in the short term, Otherwise, you'll probably waste a lot of time, energy, resource if you're not ready for that. And then I'd probably also steal exactly what Andreas said is reach out and speak to people like I'd probably say us now, because of the kind of progress that we've made. Speak to people like us, reach out to people like us, who have kind of had those experiences and got to a certain point. Again, by no means where we want to be, but I think it then allows you to cut a couple of corners and learn from what we've learned. And then as long as you do the reps, you can get there. But you just have to then implement and do the activities, which is a barrier for so many people is taking the action.
Yeah, there's a sentence I heard. I can't remember who said it exactly, but it was something like, "If I don't do it, who's gonna do it?" That as soon as I heard that, it really struck me. I'm like, we've got all these clients. They're trusting us. They're relying on us. Yeah, I might be tired. I might be exhausted after a long week. But if I don't do it, who's gonna do it? Who's gonna do it? Who's gonna do the strategy? Who's gonna be responsible for their results? And that gives you, I guess, a sense of importance, a sense of fulfillment to an extent, and really kind of fuels you forward. But it comes down to being passionate about what you're doing, like you say, knowing what you're in for as well.
Turning to you then, I guess, Stelios, in terms of your role in the business, because you've come from joining us half in, half out of uni. We were probably a bad influence there. And
I'd say good.
and you've come on a journey over the last sort of 3 years with us. 2 of them were part-time, supporting on a graphic design perspective. You'd never held a graphic design role before in your life. You perhaps played around a bit on Canva, but you spent a lot of time learning how to deliver work to the standard that we wanted, and we didn't let you until you did. So that's something to be said for how quickly you came on there. What would you say to someone who maybe is working in a small business or wants to join an agile business like ours that's kind of on that rocket ship as such? How do you make it work, and how do you have success in your role?
I would say do it, go for it. Literally, the more work, even especially when you're young, the more work, the better. Literally, okay, you have a social life, forget it for a little bit. You don't have to go out. It's fine. Literally, focus 5 years, 6 years, and you'll get literally what you want. The grass is greener on the other side. It actually is. If you work hard, you can achieve anything. But obviously, I was influenced by you guys in a very good way. Obviously, I'm the next person in the group. Yeah, definitely positive. The best decision I did was dropping out of uni. Yeah, should have done it earlier, but we're here.
It was
That's a
pretty.
big-
You couldn't have done it too much earlier.
It was right at the start. I should have done it the second day, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Something
just
like
knew.
that.
I walked into that room, saw everyone around me. No disrespect to anyone, but it just wasn't for me. Wasn't for me. I just knew there was something more for me. Yeah, definitely.
Makes sense. And yeah, like you say, at your age, you could try do anything. You could try learn any skill. You could fail, could restart, could fail again, could restart. Would probably have zero impact. Yeah, so yeah, I'm glad you did, to be honest.
Yeah.
You're starting to sound like Gary Vee. I think that's very much a Gary Vee. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. No, really interesting. And
Interesting journey, to say the least.
I think it's been an interesting journey for all of
Very,
us.
yeah.
And I think as a business, we're really looking forward to 2025. There's so many exciting things on the horizon. I've got some really cool meetings in London next week that could not be more excited about. And there's some great clients that we're looking to work with, some great new team members that we're looking to on board. So I guess on behalf of Solvi, it's been a great year, and we're really happy with where we're at. And we can't wait to see where 2025 takes us.
Dude, let's get it.
That's 2024 wrapped, isn't it? Yeah.
Exactly, yeah.